No, I can't
More and
hear
more.
you.
Check,
I haven't
check.
heard anything
1,
since
2,
I
1,
was
2.
told
Check,
to be patient.
check. 1, 2.
Well, welcome along to the Zolder circuit, welcome along to the finale of the 2025 NASCAR Euro Series. This is where the championships will be decided in both the Pro and the Open division. This is going to be a hugely important weekend with the championships on the line. And we start it all off, of course, with qualifying. Well, as you can see, we might be delayed for a couple of minutes. The previous racing action or qualifying action this morning has yielded a couple of abandoned cars. Very, very early in the weekend, we already have lots of fans trackside getting ready to take in day one of the playoff finals. Of course, the Euro NASCAR playoffs, double points on the line. That started last time out at Oschersleben. The final 4 races of the year form our playoffs with double points on the line. No drivers eliminated in the playoff format in the NASCAR Euro Series, which means it is still wide open. As you can see there, 40 points, the regular season victory tally, it's 80 points in the playoffs, etc., etc. But as I said, wide open. However, we do know who the championship favourites are going to be. In the Pro division, there are several combatants looking to win the championship. In the Open division, it's looking a little bit more secure for Thomas Chrysonis, the Greek sensation, who's come into his own this year. But everyone in the paddock has something to fight for this weekend, and everyone eagerly anticipates that first green flag of the competitive weekend that will come just a few minutes in qualifying, and we start to determine who our champions will be.
For more than a decade, the sacred lands of Zolder have been hosting the pinnacle of NASCAR in Europe. Legends have risen. Heroes have fallen. Friends and foes meet here again. But only one driver can raise the trophy. There can be only one NASCAR Euro Series champion.
As you can see, the marshals already trackside here at Zolder. And the marshals here at Zolder often quite well drilled. If you look at the track map, you can see the 14 corners that make up this layout, and many of them are deep braking zones or corners with big curbs that it's optimal to bounce across, and that does mean sometimes that there's a little bit of incident and accident around at the circuit, but it has consistently delivered very exciting racing in the NASCAR Euro Series. Of course, the first 4 turns of the circuits are fairly quick mid-speed corners where you've got to fight the grip of the car a little bit, and then you get into that chicane-heavy middle sector, the Klein chicane, the first of them, the signature chicane, one would argue, of Zolder. You go over the Sacrament Schelling and the Butte, the nice section with the crest leading down to the second chicane, and then the final sector, of course, with that all-important Boulderberg box section where there is a nice steep braking zone into what is turn 10. And then a final opportunity to maybe make a move under braking is presented at the Jackie X box, which is the last couple of corners. So you can see everyone trying to pick out their spot where to witness this qualifying session. Of course, in the qualifying, we do have a super pole element, at least in the Pro Division, so the top 10 will move forward into Super Pole, and certainly anyone in championship contention is going to need to be there in Super Pole. It feels like a 3-horse race in the Pro Division, with Vittorio Garelli leading the championship. Paul Giuffreau just 4 points back, though. That means that if Giuffreau were to win the race later on today, no matter where Garelli finishes, he will be the championship leader. There it is on screen, just 4 points between them. Gianmarco Ercli, 3rd in the standings. Garrett Lowe, 4th position. I don't think he's able to win it from there. In fact, it would require a lot of drama for the top 3 for it to be a possibility. But those 3, Ercli, Giuffreau, Garelli, the 3 to watch. You see the rest of the top 10 there. Garrett Lowe, Thomas Chrysonis, then Liam Hazemans, Sebastian Blakemolen, Martin Dubek, Vladimir Osiortis, and then the Challenger Trophy leader, Claudio Remeggio Capelli, breaking into the overall top 10, I think for the first time this year, coming out of Oschersleben, coming good as the double points come in, which is always important here in the NASCAR Euro Series. If you have a great start to the season and then you start to struggle in the playoffs, unfortunately that's kind of the wrong way around. You need to be quick when there are optimal points on the line. So you see there the cars queuing up, waiting around for the release, and the stromwatches.com countdown to green confirming that we will be underway in less than a minute's time for the first session. As you can see there, we've got plenty of, as always, it must be said, plenty of American muscle on the spectator banks and display areas as well. It's always a bit of a melting pot for the US car communities whenever the NASCAR Euro Series in town this weekend. Started off hot, of course, with running on Thursday. We crowned a champion in Jose Penalta in the Rookie Challenge, the regularity format. So our congratulations to Jose on his triumph. And of course, we had our parade down into the town centre, and the fans had the opportunity to see the cars up close and personal, and even see them on the public road. And we are out onto the circuit, so qualifying is underway. And this, of course, being qualifying for the Pro Division. So this doesn't determine the grid for the first 5 rows. It will determine the grid for 11th backwards. So for the drivers here, it is going to be important, yes, but if you're in a top 10 position, if you're a regular front runner in the series, it might not be fully determinative as to where you're going to be on the grid. The cars are rolling then, and some very interesting names are among those on the circuit already. We do have quite a few drivers rejoining or debuting in the NASCAR Euro Series within the Pro Division this weekend. There is the 46 car, being driven by by one of the returnees, and that is Yevgen Sokolovsky. A very big welcome back to Yevgen Sokolovsky. It's been a little while since we've seen him. It's his first time in the car this year. There was plans at one time to see him in Oschersleben, but it's great to have him with us for this weekend. Could it mark a return to the series on a more permanent basis? We'll have to see. And of course, it's great to see Marco Stipp Motorsport back again as well. I believe we might be able, as we see Ryan Vargas on the circuit. So there's another returnee. We'll talk about him in just a minute. I believe we might be able to check in with Andre Viegold. Andre, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Do you hear me?
Doesn't appear that we have Andre, unfortunately, so we'll see if we can get that rectified, but some technical issues here this morning. There's Jack Davidson, who'll be hoping for a strong finish to his season, of course, in the number 21 Lux Motorsport machine. They've been on good form at times this weekend, this season, and he'll be looking to carry it on this weekend. Now, in terms of target times to watch out for in today's racing, the qualifying record here in the Pro Division is a 1:36.855, but we've already seen track records getting beaten this weekend in free practice, so I don't know if that's going to stand. It was Stein Longin who got a 1:36.855 to set the qualifying record here back in 2021. I get the feeling that at least that record may go before the time we are finished here in this session. Now, it's worth noting that we are once again adopting the group format here in qualifying. So just the 13 cars on the circuit for the time being. And then the big hitters, as it were, will be out second. This is in championship order. So what we're seeing here is the bottom half of the championship order in the Pro Division in this group. We will then roll out the big guns, and we'll see who the fastest 10 are that we then take into the Super Pole session. The early benchmark is Sebastian Bleekemolen on a 1:41.841, and we'll see what he can do to improve on that. Of course, that's not a representative time, so I expect that will very, very sharply drop in the next couple of flying laps. It usually takes a couple of laps for everyone to ramp up their performance. We saw and briefly mentioned, of course, that Ryan Vargas is back in the NASCAR Euro Series. A warm welcome back to Vargas, who we haven't seen this season. Great to have him back, and in collaboration, of course, with the number 48 crew down at Marco Stipp Motorsport. He is having quite a time at the moment, because he's also about to turn his hand to Monster Jam competition. Yes, that is monster trucks for the first time in his career. It's going to be quite the honour for him. He's a long-term fan of Monster Jam monster truck competition, and he's going to be driving one of the more famed outfits in the form of El Toro Loco, which, if you recall seeing a bull-bodied truck flipping and doing incredible things in freestyle competitions in Monster Jam. Yes, it's that one, the one that occasionally blows smoke from its snout. It's going to be very interesting to see what Ryan Vargas can do in that machine. Also, a warm welcome to one of the teammates of this car, the number 69 Sebastian Bleekemolen on screen. Of course, he's the team boss down at Team Bleekemolen. but one of his teammates for this weekend is a newcomer in the form of British Formula 4 race winner from this season, Chase Fernandez. I don't recall in the recent times a driver going from F4 straight into the NASCAR Euro Series, but the youth movement down at the team Blake Emolan squad is continuing at pace. Of course, we have the brilliant Bruno Mulders, who we'll see in the second phase of this qualifying session. He's been setting the world alight in the NASCAR Euro Series across both divisions this year. But I'm interested to see what Chase Fernandez can do. He has some experience of closed top racing, of closed wheel racing. In the Ginetta Junior category, where he was very competitive. But it's safe to say the NASCAR Euro Series is something of a different arrangement. The cars are wildly different, and it will be a new experience for Chase Fernandez, who primarily is seeing this as a bit of fun, the opportunity on a free weekend to go racing. But we were talking about it a little bit during the week, and he said, you know what, I mean, we've got drivers like SVG, like Connor Zilisch out there really making a career of it stateside in NASCAR racing. And if I do get the opportunity to perhaps one day follow in their footsteps, I certainly won't argue with it. And he is, again, seeing this primarily as fun. He's barely done any laps before this weekend, so perhaps our expectations should be somewhat measured. But he's a vastly talented young man, and we'll see what he can do. Currently 7th in the standings, a 1:40.214 for him. The fastest lap out there is from the number 22 car, which we saw a few moments ago. That's another returnee, actually. Mark Goossens back in the championship. A 1:38.482 is the benchmark for the Belgian. How great to have him back now that we're on his home turf here in Zolder. So let's run you down the order as it stands. Across the line comes the 46 car of Yevgen Sokolovsky. That moves him up to 11th. Mark Goossens, again, the benchmark on a 38.482. Julian Reberg is next in second with a 1:38.775. I know that he and Happy Nessa were having some issues with that 77 car yesterday, so hopefully they've rectified that. It looks like they've got some good pace. And then it's Ryan Vargas next, third fastest in the anyone.com backed machine, the Marco Stipp Motorsport entry that we see there in the second car in shot, actually. So the two Marco Stipp cars are running in tandem. Vargas We're just over a second away from track record pace here, which again I expect to fall by the wayside potentially in this qualifying session if the conditions remain as they are. But all the same, that is knocking on the door of a time that could be enough for a top 10 potentially. So impressive stuff here from Reberg. I think you need a 1:37 to be fully sure that you're making it into the top 10 Super Pole shootout. It's a projection, not a spoiler. 35 seconds left on the session. So for a majority of the drivers, they will already be on their final lap. Certainly this will be the last lap for Julian Reberg. He's not going to break the beam again in time for another lap. So this is it for Julian. If there's any more performance to extract from the number 77 promotion machine, it needs to come soon. We've had a track limits lap time deletion for Claudio Remeggio Capelli on the previous tour, but then he goes quicker with a 1:39.926 to go 9th fastest, but still a bit of a disappointment that by Capelli's lofty standards. He's usually one of the quickest drivers out there. Into the pits comes the number 69 of Sebastian Bleekemolen. He's decided to abandon his final lap. Julian Reberg is about to break the beam for the final time. Can he go quicker than his previous lap? The answer is no. A 1:38.197 remains the gold standard, remains the benchmark. And it looks as though Claudio Remeggio Capelli is out of the throttle, so he's done with his flying laps. Mark Goossens goes second fastest in the number 22 car, which on the entry list I think is still a Chevrolet Camaro, but I noted that we've got the Toyota Camry front fascia on the number 22 Club Motorsport entry, or Club Competition entry, I should say. Of course, all of these cars are mechanically identical, 5.7 litre V8s delivering somewhere around 400 brake horsepower, delivered through a 5-speed sequential transmission from Samsonas, which is a new addition that we've welcomed for this year, and it has been quite popular as well. And I must say, I've always wanted to drive a sequential gearbox race car. Just memories of GT1 cars getting bashed up and down the gearbox live long in my memory, and certainly it's exciting to see the Euro NASCARs adopt that form. So then, coming out of that first group, it is Julian Reberg fastest with a 138.197. Then it's Mark Goossens, a 138.271. Just 0.02 quicker than Sebastian Bleekemolen's 38.273. Ryan Vargas, fourth fastest in the 48 car, a 38.631. Chase Fernandez, fifth fastest, only a few hundredths of a second behind Ryan Vargas, which is a good showing from the young man from the UK. Giorgio Maggi in sixth, Massimilio Lanza in seventh, Jack Davidson in eighth, and then Claudio Reggio Capelli in ninth place on a 139.926. Ulysse Del So rounding out the top 10 in this half of the session. Sokolovsky, Stevanovsky and Federico Monti bringing us down to the rear. Of course, this is all immaterial for now, the order they're in, until we know where the second session drivers stack up. You saw there Sebastian Bleekemolen conferring a bit with Bruno Mulders, who sat in the cockpit of the number 72 car, ready and raring to go, ready to launch himself out there onto the circuit for the final qualifying session of the year. Of course, Bruno, now a race winner in the NASCAR Euro Series in the Open Division. Had a great run of it in Oschersleben and was as impressive as ever. Had a brilliant last lap battle with Thomas Chrysonis and managed to come out on top. However, across that weekend in Oschersleben, Thomas Chrysonis, certainly in the Open Division, set himself up as the championship favourite. Of course, we'll look at the Open Division standings a bit later on when we get into their qualifying, which is some way down the road, because we've got the second batch of cars heading out for qualifying in 1 minute and 10 seconds, as you can see on the stromwatches.com countdown to green. And then we will run for 10 minutes with those cars, and the 10 fastest cars across both sessions will then head out onto the circuit for the Superpole shootout. Of course, if you're a driver who maybe wants to make their first Superpole appearance of the year, you'll be hoping that the relatively gloomy weather here at the circuit converts into rain. I don't want to wish that on anybody, certainly, but if it were to suddenly burst open with some precipitation now, it would mean that someone like perhaps a Giorgio Maggi, who's sixth fastest on our screens right now, he could end up in Superpole, even though he's got a 38.9, which on paper shouldn't be enough. But if the other batch of cars end up skating around, then that could be the reality. I don't think we're on for any rain this morning, though, so that shouldn't be a warranted fear. But one of these days, it might well be a point of interest in this group qualifying format.
Check.
As you can see, Martin Dubek is going to lead them out. The engines will roar, and we'll be back out there. We are now back out there for phase 2 of this qualifying session.
Check 1, 2, Adam.
So Dubek, of course, the reigning champion for the Euro NASCAR Open Division. He's looking unlikely to defend that title, unfortunately, given the current situation. 35 points back from Thomas Chrysonis, who leads the points. Chrysonis has really set himself up well there in the Open Division. But across both Pro and Open, Dubek will be looking to have a good weekend. Here we see, though, some of the all-important championship contenders on the circuit. You see there the silver machine, that's Gianmarco Ercoli. Of course, just going to the front of the queue there, the number 24 car, that is our championship leader, Vittorio Garelli. And a new look there as well for the number 55 car. So that is a fresh coat of paint for the season finale for Fabrizio Armetta of Club Competition, who has been really strong at times this year. Quite a treat here as we get a live onboard with Liam Hasemans in the number 30 Retty Jones Racing machine. That's exciting to see that we're maybe going to get a bit of insight from inside the cockpit this weekend. And the number 30 car, of course, made its first visit to Victory Lane in the Saturday race in Oschersleben last time out, and we wondered if maybe it beckoned a sign that Liam Hasemans was going to be a factor in the championship battle after a mixed start to the season. Unfortunately, he had issues in race 2 of the weekend, dropped through the order with technical dramas. So the championship is almost certainly a bridge too far for Hasemans now, 6th place and 63 points back. It would take many cars not even starting the race, unfortunately, for Hasemans at this juncture. But all the same, he's had a strong season. The Retty Jones Racing partnership between he, Jill Linster, and of course the technical partners at Hendricks Motorsport has now yielded a victory, and I suspect it could be the first of many. So Garelli on his first flying lap, leading Thomas Chrysonis around the circuit, and then Gianmarco Ercoli not far behind. Now, if any of you are even a little bit superstitious, you might be interested to know that our two of our protagonists in the series, in the Pro Division Championship battle, that is this man, Vittorio Garelli, and his Italian cohort, Gianmarco Ercoli, there, they are both on 13 victories in the all-time statistics for the NASCAR Euro Series Pro Division. Not everyone likes the number 13 as much as Thomas Chrysonis, who has it on the side of his door there in the black and orange PK Car Sport machine. But Garelli and Ercoli will both be looking to break that tie this weekend with a 14th, maybe even a 15th race victory in the Pro Division. We alluded to, this is where we expect the fastest times to come from, of course, in this second group, being the championship front runners. You see there Garelli running deep into the first corner, and it seemed like everyone got caught out there. I wonder if there's some fluid maybe down into turn 1, because it certainly looked as though there was some lack of grip there for Garelli and then everybody else. The first of the lap times in from Gianmarco Ercoli at 139.937. Some more improvements to come, of course. Again, the first flying lap's usually not representative. They want to build heat into these Hoosier tyres in a gradual nature, because the tyres on the cars now will do qualifying, they'll do race 1, and they'll do race 2 on Sunday. So from here on out, they're on the same set of Hoosier tyres. So if you abuse them to get heat into them within 30 seconds to a minute, it's only going to cost you later on in the weekend. Garelli and Ercoli running in tandem here in qualifying. Not something you often see between championship contenders at this juncture of a battle. We'll see what their lap times are this time by. Of course, for Ercoli, he wants every success he can get, since he's 18 points back from Garelli and 14 back from Dufresne. Here they come across the line. Bruno Mulders sets the fastest time of the day so far, a 1:37.734. So Mulders has gone top on his first flying lap. Meanwhile, Erkeley's time across the line was a 38.4. Thomas Teufel lapping well as well. He's done a 38.4, but Bruno Mulders, the first driver to beat the previous group, as it were. And that was with his very first flying lap, I believe. So Mulders not wasting any time to get on the pace in that number 72. The young Dutchman, quite the revelation this year, graduating from karting directly into the NASCAR Euro Series. And again, we spoke about Chase Fernandez earlier on. Now seeing Bruno Mulders on screen, it does feel like there's something of a youth movement in the NASCAR Euro Series. And I must say, obviously I talk in other paddocks to people sometimes about the NASCAR Euro Series, and I get an ever-increasing feeling that more and more young drivers are looking at what's going on in America, looking at the NASCAR Cup Series in its current form and showing an active interest, especially looking at guys like SVG and Zilish and quite a few of the kind of road course natured drivers moving up and succeeding in the highest levels of the NASCAR US divisions. I do wonder if that's going to have a knock-on effect on drivers coming in at a very young age into the Euro Series to try and build a reputation. Garelli goes fastest, a 1:37.338. Bruno Mulders' previous tour was a 1:37.388, so just half a tenth between Garelli and Mulders. Erkeley just with a 37.424 across the line there as well. So that puts him third fastest. Dufresne with a 37.481 fourth fastest. And then Thomas Teufel is up into fifth position with a 38.003. At this point, only two drivers from the first batch are still in the top 10. Mark Goossens on his return to the category, and Julian Rehberg, who's still up in seventh place on the combined timing scoring. There's Paul Dufresne bouncing his way across the curbs at the Villeneuve chicane. You see those tyre bundles, of course, on the inside of some of these corners. Certainly got to be careful. You've got to push the limit, but it sounds simple, but you cannot push it too far. We're into the final 90 seconds of this session. Mulders across the line does not improve on his lap time. What can Garelli do this time by? He has committed to do this lap. I was wondering if he might bring it in, thinking he's done enough, but a 1:37.023 for Garelli. That's a solid lap time. We haven't got quite into the 1:36s yet. I was speculating whether or not we would see a qualifying record breaker here, but we're not actually seeing it at this juncture. To reiterate, the track record around here is in the 1:36s. 1:36.855, so we're only a couple of tenths away, but we've not seen that last iota of pace from anyone yet. And you saw there Garelli backing off, you see now Erkeley backing off. It seems as if the top contenders are happy with their times. You see Paul Dufresne in the back of the field, while his last time was good enough to go second, 1:37.144. Now, if you're Bruno Mulders, third fastest, 1:37.388, I'd be tempted to peel into the pits now, because I think you've done enough to get into the top 10 shootout. There's no point burning the tyres up for one last lap when you're in P3. Certainly Liam Hasemans thinks he's done enough. He's come into the pits despite running 7th.
Check.
Will there be any last improvements? There is Mulders into the pit lane, so he's not taken my advice, because I'm sure he doesn't have a direct feed to my audio in the cockpit, but he has decided not to do that last flying lap. Thomas Chrysonis, on the other hand, is going to cross the line again. From 6th fastest, he crosses the line and does not improve, remains in P6. And of course, with the Super Pole coming up, it doesn't really matter whether you're first or 10th. It does determine the order that you go out in, but it's somewhat immaterial where you are in the top 10 so long as you make it. Worth noting that Garrett Lowe has just about made it into the top 10. He's 10th fastest at the moment, and I think he will be done with his last lap time. He did cross the line to start a new lap, but I don't think he's going to finish it since he has made it into that top 10. And actually he did finish the last lap and goes 8th fastest with that time.
Check.
So then, here is your top 10 going into Super Pole. Gorelli, Jufro, Mulders, Gianmarco Ercoli, Thomas Torfel, Thomas Chrysonis, Liam Hasemans, Garrett Lowe, Fabrizio Armetta and Julian Ribberg. That's our top 10 going into Super Pole. Julian Ribberg, the only driver to make it from batch 1 into batch 2 into Super Pole. So he was out in the first group for the drivers in the second half of the standings, and thankfully he has made it into Super Pole, which is great news for promotion, because again they were having to work quite hard on that 77 car yesterday to get everything working. So the next task then is Super Pole, and the drivers will get just 2 flying laps to determine where they end up on the first 5 rows of the grid. Of course, for everybody else outside the top 10, we now know the order. So Mark Goosens will be starting 11th alongside Sebastian Blakemolen when we go racing later on. Then it'll be David Kajaya and Vladimir Osiortis, 13th and 14th. Dubek and Vargas on row 8, Chase Fernandez and Giorgio Maggi on row 9, Massimilio Lanza and Jack Davidson on row 10, Claudio Meggio Capelli and Ulysse Delso on row 11, Sokolovsky and Stefanovsky in row 12, and then Federico Monti set to start from 25th. But the top 10 is yet to be determined. 2 flying laps to come here in the Super Pole session. Certainly this will be a compelling outing. You see there the fans clocking on to the fact that they're on camera. Hello, everybody. You see some merchandise, and that's one thing I really love about the NASCAR Euro Series events, as you can see there. The opportunity to do some in-person shopping for NASCAR diecasts, NASCAR shirts, and so on is always in the paddock, and that's great to have. Of course, not many opportunities to do that for the European fans, but it's one of the many things the NASCAR Euro Series brings into town. So here comes the Super Pole session. The cars are lining up, and it'll be all important to see, particularly how those second flying laps pan out here. The cars lining up in the order in which they have qualified up to this point. So Gorelli is the fastest person in the first 2 sessions, is now going to lead them off in Super Pole. Super Pole coming up then in just a few seconds' time. And that's the most intense place to be, in the cockpit there. Liam Hasemans stewing over what comes next, as is Thomas Chrysonis in the 13. So then the Super Pole session begins. The top 10 positions on the grid will be determined by this session. The drivers make their way out, as you can see on the timing tower there on your screen. 2 flying laps only. So they'll do this out lap and then they'll have 2 more tours of the circuit. Many of the drivers don't immediately leap out of the gate with quick times. Although Paul Giffreau is typically an exception to that rule. He's usually pretty fast immediately. We'll see what they can do then. In this session, it's the last time this season that we are into a Super Pole session here in the Pro Division. Garelli has always been a strong qualifier. Can he be bested here? We will find out in just a few moments. The first of 2 flying laps will begin now for Vittorio Garelli, and it will begin, I think, under some pressure from Paul Giffreau, who really is tailing that number 24 as they come across the line. Of course, that number 24 team, PK Car Sport, they really know this track well. It's the home circuit for the team. And a lot of home support will be behind that number 24 this weekend to see a Belgian team win a championship this year in the NASCAR Euro Series. Not the first time, of course, for PK Car Sport, a very decorated team in the annals of the history of this series, whether it's with Alan Day, whether it's with Anthony Kumpen. We've seen a lot of success for this team. Across the crest of the hill they go then on this first flying lap. You see Bruno Mulders in the back of shot as well. He was 3rd fastest coming into this Super Pole session. He'd love to be on the first couple of rows of the grid to try and challenge for an overall podium, potentially even a race win in the Pro Division to really end his season on great form. Riding on board there with Liam Hasemans as he goes over the crest of the hill into that braking zone. As soon as you're done steering, it's time to jump on those brakes for the chicane. Having to be very precise, of course, on those curbs to try and minimize the speed scrub and minimize the really how severe the corner is. The more curb you take, the straighter the line. Here comes Garelli across the line to set the benchmark. His first lap, a 36.521. The form book has been thrown out immediately. That is an incredibly fast time. Moreover, it's a new qualifying record from Vittorio Garelli. The fastest lap that we've seen this morning, and it comes on the first flying lap. It's usually flying lap number 2 where the quick times appear, but Vittorio Garelli not hanging around here in Zolder. A 36.521 is the benchmark for the rest of the field. Everybody else at least 8/10 back. Bruno Mulders at 137.341 was the next fastest of the first flying laps. Well, can anybody get anywhere near that on lap number 2? Will Garelli find more time on lap number 2? His first sector was purple. It was another fastest sector of anybody that time by for the Italian. Sector 2 split is coming up now, and it's another purple sector. Garelli is on an incredible lap here. To put it into perspective, in the middle sector alone, Bruno Mulders was 0.6 off of Garelli. Thomas Tuffel is on a strong lap as well through the middle sector. We'll keep an eye on his lap time, but here comes Garelli. It's going to be an improvement, surely. Yes, a 136.454. That is a huge lap time from Vittorio. Paul Giffreau crosses the line for the second time with a 1:37.247. Bruno Mulders is across the line with a 37.341. That was Chrysonis there with a 37.695. Is there anyone else left? Yes, Garrett Lowe is about to cross the line for the last time. A 37.808 is his benchmark, and he leaps forward to fourth position. Garrett Lowe with a 37.499, a great lap time from promotions number 99, the American driver. But the only driver into the 1:36s, Vittorio Gorelli. He is on pole by almost 0.8 of a second, 0.793. That is a huge, huge dominance of the session. The gap from Gorelli to Giuffreau from first to second is greater than the gap between Giuffreau in second and Ercoli in eighth. And that's a headline all of its own. Gianmarco Ercoli only 8th on the grid. Let's run you through that order from Superpole then. The top 10 for the race later on. Vittorio Gorelli on pole position. Paul Giuffreau will line up alongside him on the front row of the grid, but an 0.8 disparity in one lap pace in that Superpole is an incredible performance from PK Carsport and Gorelli. Bruno Mulders, a 1:37.341, good enough for third in the standings. Garrett Lowe, fourth position in that number 99 car, the promotion number 99, a great effort from him. Thomas Toffel in the 34, fifth fastest, as you now see on your screens. Thomas Chrysonis, sixth, and all Thomas row 3 of the grid. Liam Hazemans will line up 7th when we go racing later on. Gianmarco Ercoli, 8th fastest, and then Fabrizio Armetta and Julian Reberg rounding out our top 10, rounding out our Super Pole order. And what an incredible, incredible display that was from Vittorio Gorelli. Gorelli with a new track record in qualifying conditions, and with a level of pace that's going to have everyone else scratching their heads and saying, right, how? How and what do we need to do? The number 3 RDV car is wheeled back into its garage. Paul Giuffreau will be happy with a front row start, but again, when you're 0.8 off the fastest time, even as the second fastest driver, it just indicates that, well, I've got some work to do. Of course, the hope for some of the teams will be that Gorelli's got a qualifying car and that the race pace won't be quite so relentless, but we've seen from Gorelli before that what he can do in qualifying is often matched by what he can do in the race conditions. You saw there in the back of the previous shot the canal that runs alongside the straight between turns 3 and 4. Quite a serene place, Zolder, once the engines stop roaring on the side of the canal. See there, quite a busy paddock, of course. Plenty of racing going on beyond the NASCAR Euro Series action, as always. We saw at the very start of the broadcast of some clear up from the Belcar session that preceded this. It's their season finale as well, so for the local fans, 2 championship deciders this weekend, which is great value for money on the ticket, and certainly value for money as always. A big aim for the NASCAR Euro Series organisers, making it a worthwhile repeat destination to come every year for Euro NASCAR when it comes to your part of the world. Of course, we've seen plenty of calendar news in recent times. And while we haven't had confirmation of where our new destination will be, there is now confirmation that there will be a new spot on the calendar. A new destination. Will it be a returning nation? Will it be somewhere that we've been to previously? We'll have to wait and see for that one. I think we're not too far away from making that announcement. So post-season finale, make sure to keep an eye on the Euro NASCAR socials at Euro NASCAR on all platforms. And we will see what our 6th and final destination on the 2026 calendar will be. I must say the Netherlands does bigger canal boats than the UK. Looking at that site there. There's even a car on the back of it, which is remarkable. There's the Team Blake-Molen crew working hard to get the cars ready, of course, for the Open Division qualifying session that will be just a few minutes away. Not much of a turnaround, and of course it's the same cars that run in both Pro and Open. There's always that little layer of pressure for the drivers in the first session, knowing that their mate is waiting for the opportunity to take the car over. In the case of that number 24, it'll be Thomas Dombrowski who takes over.
All right, thank you so much, Adam. I'm here with our pole winner, with Vittorio Girelli. Another stormwatches.com a pole award for you. By the way, here we have the Euro NASCAR watch that you can get now as a fan as well. But you crushed the lap record of Zolder. You were 8/10 faster than the second guy. What was that? A phenomenal lap.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fast also yesterday in practice. We did a 6.7. I did a 6.5 today, I think. And yeah, I think the others were a bit off in this moment, but yeah, the 24 PK Car Sport is literally a GT3. You know, is so much down, so much so much grip. I could drive very well. I stay focused, and I managed to do 2 very good laps. So what can I say? You know, the first half is done, but now is long battle, long war. I'm ready for it, and let's do it.
Can you give me a little bit of an insight into your emotional world right now? It could be a back-to-back championship win for you. You won here last year, you got the championship. It's a 3-way battle with Giuffre and Ercole. What's going through your mind?
Yeah, the level is very high. These guys are Paul, Jimmy, they are very, very, high-level competitors. So yeah, I needed to work a lot this year, and we're there where everything can happen. Everything is still open. Races are long, but we will do it.
All right, thank you so much. Grazie mille, congratulations. This is our stormwatches.com pole award winner. And here again, this beautiful watch.
Right, well, we are just about to see green for the Open Division qualifying. You see there Bruno Mulders kind of gesticulating, saying, should I get in the car? I don't think we're going to go green for another minute or 2. In fact, yes, we are. The green flag has flown at the end of pit lane. So we should have cars rolling on this session. Indeed we do. There goes is that 77 car? No, sorry, that's the number 75 machine. Of course, we saw Raphael Lessard race last time out. This weekend, that car driven by Massimilio Lanza in Pro and Davide Frulio in the Open Division. That car entered by Cal Racing. Happinessa out onto the circuit for the first time. in Saturday morning. Didn't get many laps on Friday, so we'll see how Nessa can do. There's the 76 car out onto the circuit as well. Mikael Bleekemolen, the legend trophy driver. Of course, ex-F1 Grand Prix race starter. All the way back in the 1970s, and Mikael Bleekemolen, of course, now 76 years old, as foretold by the door number. But always great to see him still racing and still loving his motorsport. The number one there, Andres Beers, in the open division. Of course, again, we're splitting this in half, so the cars that head out on the circuit now are the second half of the points table. All those who haven't scored points at all, if they're a newcomer for this weekend. For instance, it's good to see Nick Strickler back in the NASCAR Euro Series. He's on the entry list in the number 21 car. Francesco Leogrande is also on the entry list in that number 22. It's the first time we've seen him in the series full stop, if my memory serves me correctly. And his cohort here this weekend in the 22, the Pro Division driver that we saw earlier on, Mark Goossens. He isn't even on the version of the entry list that I have in front of me, so I think it was a bit of a last-minute deal to get the Goose into the number 22 down at club competition. Valerio Marzi out on the circuit in the new look number 55 car. Blue, purple and orange decals on the black number 55 machine. Of course, being driven by Valerio Marzi, and just sharing some track space there. I think that was with Frulio on his first flying lap, yes. Hopefully Frulio wasn't particularly tripped up there by the 55. In general, it seems that they've quite slowly trickled out onto the circuit for this session, so with 6 minutes and 15 seconds left on the clock, I don't think there's going to be terribly much time for these drivers to set laps, so they're going to need to be on the money pretty much from the word go here. Of course, as in the pro session, the objective for these drivers will be to make it into that overall top 10, albeit there's no Super Bowl at play here. It is just the two qualifying sessions that make up the order in the open division. So the lap times here will definitively define where you start on the grid. It's important, if you are in this first session, to set the best lap time you can, and then you've got to kind of sit down in the garage, cross your fingers, and hope that it's good enough to have a good starting position once the second batch of cars is finished with their running. See there the 22 heading off towards this corner, which is one of the best overtaking opportunities on the circuit, the Boulderberg box. It's a very deep braking zone, firing down the gearbox into that tight, almost hairpin bend. It's greater than a 90-degree corner and often presents a last lap lunge or two across the weekend. So the 22 car heading into the first corner at a fairly reduced rate of knots, which is interesting because, again, these are meant to be flying laps, and it looks as though it's a gentle approach from Francesco Leogrande here as he gets to grips with the car. Less so for Happy Nessa, looking fairly committed there into turn 4. Frulio is the current pace setter with the 43 points. Well, I was going to say a 43. It's now 141.102. So Davide Frulio on the improvement path. Another 141 in the books, this time from Nick Strickler in the number 21 Lux Motorsport car. So Strickler into the 41s, Florian Richard into the 41s as well. Of course, we know that we can see 136s from the very quickest driver from that pro session. So certainly these aren't going to be times that are good enough for leading positions. The fastest ever qualifying lap in the open division is a 138.078. The fastest race lap, though, is actually quicker, a 137.641. Both records belonging to Paul Dupree back in 2023. I wouldn't mind betting that at the very least that qualifying lap record doesn't last long, with the likes of Chrysonis and Dubek set to come out. It's their runs. We saw Strickler there, just go through Boulderberg box. Here's Andres Beers, the new pace setter, a 140.356 last time across the line from Beers and the Alex Caffey Motorsport Ford Mustang. Frulio with the 40.575 as well. There comes the another improvement for Andres Beers. We watch the timing screen to confirm it is a 39. Is into turn 4. First driver in this session to go sub 1 minute 40. Let's see what this last lap time is going to yield. Will anyone else get sub 1 minute 40 in this batch? Davide Frulio comes across the line to a 140.347, which is an improvement, but not good enough. A very good first couple of sectors here from, or very good first sector from Andres Beers, but a new car on top. Beers is looking to set that benchmark. Moment though, 2 purple sectors on this lap. And it is a 138, a 138.545 for Andres Beers. I think that's going to be good enough for a top 10. Of course, the driver of the number 1, the Belgian race. Field advantage to make something happen. Oh, we've got a lot of dust. Valerio Marzi comes across the line. Let's see what lap he can put. A 38. And there's the other club competition car, the number 22. Well, Francesco Leogrande, his best time in the session of 44.637 leaves him 10th of the 10 in this batch. Thankfully, no car down there in the gravel. It is just a wall of dust that has been kicked up by somebody. But I'm genuinely impressed with that lap time from Andres Beers. Got quicker and quicker there. The Belgian made a strong impression when he debuted here at Zolder. So we should have expected him to be strong this weekend. And certainly that might be good enough for top 10 starting position. We'll have to see what everyone else produces here. Of course, we saw a 36 from Vittorio Garelli. We saw kind of low 137s onwards for everybody else. But certainly, that is a solid outing from Andres Beers. There's the ritual repositioning of the tyre stack. That's at the first chicane, unsurprisingly. Imagine you get your steps in if you're a marshal assigned to that particular post. See the leaf blowers and broomsticks being deployed as well to make sure that everybody has clean track to try and set their lap times on. 1 minute and 35 until the green flag is set to fly again, so not long to make sure everything is a-okay. To reiterate, no super pole in the open division, so these times are it, regardless of whether you make the top 10 or not. And it's going to be the big hitters, of course, in the battle in the open division that come out onto the circuit next. The open division points being led by Thomas Chrysonis of Greece, the PK Car Sport driver, of course, looking to win a championship with PK here on their home turf to conclude what's been a great first season between himself and the team. Chrysonis leading the points by 35 over Martin Dubeck. Bruno Mulders, third fastest, 48 back, the Dutchman. And then Thomas Dabrowski, fourth in the standings. Sandro Tabat-Kilatsa in fifth. Melvin de Groot in sixth in the standings, although this is an out-of-date points table that we've got there. We'll take that one down because that's not the right points versus what is on the internal documents. Thomas Chrysonis on 396 is your points leader by 35. Martin Dubeck running second in the points. Bruno Mulders third in the points, 48 back. Thomas Dombrowski fourth in the points, 54 back on 342. Sandro Tabat-Kilatsa is fifth on 335. Melvin de Groot is on 331 in sixth place. Patrick Schauber in seventh position on 326. Claudio Meggio Capelli in eighth place. Dominic Schack ninth, and Jill Linster rounding out the top 10 despite missing quite a few races in the middle portion of the season. That's your top 10 Master Trophy for the amateurs and the rookies. Is being led by Bruno Mulders, but he's only 6 clear of Thomas Dombrowski. So that battle is going to be one to watch. Certainly for Thomas Chrysonis, he's put himself into a really strong position this weekend. Going into the decider, Martin Dubeck there, who we briefly saw in the number 7, has a lot of work to do. So 11 cars make their way out onto the circuit thus far for this second phase of this qualifying session, and this is the section where we expect pole position to come from. Of course, we saw Cresones into the top 10 in Pro earlier on, and in fact I think he was the only driver doing both divisions. In fact, no, Thomas Toffel as well was very quick out there in Pro qualifying, so you'd have to consider those two favourites. Bruno Mulders as well, of course, how could I forget? He was right up there. I think based on what we've seen already this weekend, or on this qualifying broadcast alone, you'd have to consider those three the favourites, especially with that extra track time from doing both divisions, and Martin Dubeck will of course be hoping to capitalise on that as well. So then 7 minutes and 40 seconds of the session left to run. They're just now starting their first proper flying laps. Let's see how long it takes someone to beat the benchmark, which is Andres Beers on a 1:38.545, as the cars fire around the Circuitzolder. Great to hear those big V8s rumbling around this circuit. Very torquey motor, delivering just over 400 brake horsepower, yes, but also delivering a lot of low-end torque, of course. I think you can usually get away with a mid-RPM range shift on these cars, and they still pull very nicely indeed. First flying laps coming in. Bruno Mulders, a 39.416 is immediately enough to go third fastest. Of course, again, the first flying laps typically aren't the headline grabbers here in this qualifying format, so one would expect a lot more improvement yet to come, but Mulders already showing that he's still got the pace in the car, following up from what we saw in Pro earlier on. For Mulders, who of course won in Oschersleben, a little bit closer to home, the Dutchman this weekend in Belgium. We're hoping to see more of the same from the number 72 this weekend. Certainly Sebastian Blekemolen, the team boss, I think in many ways the mentor to young Bruno Mulders, will be hoping for a continuation of the form we've already seen. So I think it will be Mulders who's the first one to set a truly competitive lap time here. Right on board with Thomas Cresones. The second flying laps we'd expect to be quicker across the board. Mulders through the Jackie X-Box, the final chicane of the circuit. And I suspect this may be a time good enough to go top. Let's see as he comes across the line. Yes, it is. New benchmark in the session from Bruno Mulders, a 37.700, a 1:37.7 on the dot. That is the new benchmark. Thomas Rombrowski crosses the line with a 38.4 as well to go second fastest. Toffel and Cresones come to the start-finish line. And Toffel goes fastest by 1/1000th of a second. Remember I said that Mulders was a 37.700? Toffel with a 1:37.699. The THT by Race Art Technology car seems to be hooked up this morning. He was very strong in Pro Division qualifying. And how he'd love to start his final weekend of the year from pole. Let's see what Toffel can do on the next flyer. We're already through the first sector for everybody, and Toffel actually found 0.2 of a second through the first sector alone. But we saw there a car in the gravel. Is that Schauber? I thought it looked like the number 3 car potentially in the gravel trap, but we'll have to confirm there. Oh, it's the number 5 actually, so it's Claudio Remeggio Capelli in the gravel trap, and you can see the rear axle well dug in there. Mulders is going to come across the line. His lap should not have been interrupted by any yellow flags, and he improves to a 1:37.621. With Capelli in the gravel, we unsurprisingly go to full course yellow, and that time being completed by Mulders could prove to be critical in the battle for the grid positions. Red flag is out on the circuit, and the clock has been stopped at 2:45. I think that's an effort to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity to do one last flying lap. It was seemingly a fairly fundamental spin there from Capelli. I don't think he got any help there. In fact, the clock has now been stopped at 3 minutes. So everyone will return to the grid. Or to the pit lane, I should say, to the fast lane of the pits, and wait for the word go. But the Marshall crew already setting about getting the car out. The number 5 car of Claudio Remeggio Capelli will be retrieved before long. You see there the 72 and the 69 still burbling around in tandem for Team Bleekemolen, Melvin de Groot and Bruno Mulders, the 2 Dutchmen of differing age groups. I think Melvin would simply laugh if I said this to him, so I will say it to you. Melvin comfortably old enough to be Bruno Mulders' dad. And to be fair, he does have some good kind of racing father figures there in that Team Bleekemolen pack. The likes of Sebastian Bleekemolen and Melvin de Groot. Certainly Bruno Mulders has some good people to learn from. Claudio Remeggio Capelli in the number 5 has been freed in the Alex Caffey Academy Motorsport car. And so I suspect that these red flags won't be out for very much longer here. It will at least, of course, be held until Capelli makes it back to the pits. They may also need to sweep up a little bit of gravel as well. You see Mikael Bleekemolen greeting the 2 Team Bleekemolen cars down there in the fast lane. So he's maybe going to be sharing a little bit of input with his drivers, with his and Sebastian's drivers. But Mulders, for now, in a very strong position. Of course, while we're sat here waiting to see the next, or to see the green flag again, which we now do, the tyres have come down. They've got out of their heat cycle. And that potentially means that we are going to struggle to see a faster lap time than that 37.6 from Bruno Mulders. Certainly Bruno Mulders would like it if we didn't see any further improvements, but it's going to be a 1-lap dash here effectively between everybody. One driver this could really benefit is Andres Beers, who again, his 38.545 was a very competitive time anyway. And if the drivers behind him, like Schauber, like Capelli, who was in the gravel, like Melvin de Groot, like Martin Dubeck even, who's only 12th fastest right now, it could well be a great starting position for Beers, who's currently 5th on the screen, as you can see. But for Martin Dubeck, 12th position as it stands in this open qualifying is nothing short of, quite frankly, a disaster for his hopes of even attempting to retain the championship. Especially Thomas Cressines currently set to line up 3rd. Cars then out onto the circuit. Of course, we've already got a new qualifying record in with that 37.6 from Bruno Mulders. So as it stands, he is the Open Division record holder for qualifying pace now. Will we see any more improvements from anybody? We've got 1 minute and 15 on the clock, so it is going to be one last flying lap for everybody. And those guys there in that big pack of cars, I do hope they don't trip each other up. And for Thomas Teufel, he's going to be frustrated, I think, there. 3rd in a queue of cars. Given his performance so far, he doesn't really want any traffic ahead of him. He was so quick before the red flag. Mulders and de Groot head out in tandem. There's Dombrovski to begin his flying lap. Cressines. Teufel has dropped back somewhat here to try and give himself some breathing room for this one last bid at pole position. Gambarotto behind him. So our fastest drivers in the Open Division in this second group of qualifying, with one last lap after a red flag interruption. One last lap to try and make an impression on the session. Bruno Mulders with a personal best in the first sector. A 31.299 in sector 1. And just a thousandth of a second off in that first split is Thomas Teufel. I think it's going to be Mulders or Teufel. The middle sector will tell the story. Bouncing across the curbs there is Teufel. Slightly further ahead of him on the road, of course, is Mulders. We'll keep an eye on Mulders' second sector to see what it yields. The clock has hit 0. The checkered flag is out on this session. So this is the final flying lap. It's a 35.6 in the middle sector from Mulders. And Dombrovski is on a very quick lap as well. He'll be jumping up the order potentially, but the fastest of anybody in Sector 2 is Thomas Teufel. He is on a charge right now. Let's see if Mulders can improve on a 37.621. He comes across the line. Around the final turns, he is already gone. He crosses the line into 37.501. Is that going to be enough for pole? Here comes Thomas Dombrovski, just a few hundredths off, but Teufel is the main competition, and it's Teufel on top. A 137.041 for the THT by RaceArt Technology driver. What a showing from Thomas Teufel. A hugely critical final flying lap. And it's good enough for pole. Thomas Cressines with a late improvement as well. A 137.406 puts him on top. And Bruno Mulders, third fastest eventually. Dombrovski fourth. Martin Dubeck, thankfully for his aspirations of trying to retain the championship, he got himself up to 5th place. There you see Thomas Cressines, the focus in the eyes even on the cool-down lap as he bounces across the curbs at turns 5 and 6. But Thomas Teufel, a 37.041, is remarkably impressive. That would have been good enough for second on the grid in the Pro Division as well. But in the Open, it is good enough for P1. Cressines second then behind Thomas Teufel. They're sharing row 3 of the grid in Pro. They'll be sharing row 1 in Open. Mulders third fastest. Dombrovski fourth fastest. In 5th place, Martin Dubeck. In 6th position, it is Sandro Tavid-Kalatza, Jill Linster 7th, Patrick Schauber in 8th. Those two were tied on lap time. Melvin Groot in 9th, and then Andres Beers good enough for 10th position, ultimately his time from the first of the two sessions. Claudio Remeggio Capelli only 11th place, and of course he triggered that red flag as well. Valerio Marzi 12th fastest. He'll line up alongside Claudio on row 6, Valentino Gambarotto and Davide Frulio 13th and 14th, Nick Strickler 15th, Florian Richard 16th, 17th for Dominic Schack, Mikael Blekemolen 18th. As Andre says, congratulations to Thomas Toffel there. Andre fetching suit this weekend, my friend, by the way. We see there the next session already heading out onto the circuit, but while that's going on, Blekemolen, Reza Sardeja, Happy Nessa and Francesco Liagrande, the rest of the finishing order. As you see, our first race of the weekend will come up at 13:25, and that is for the Pro Division. Hopefully seeing the pole sitter Thomas Toffel with Andre Viegold here in a few moments' time. As the weekend continues on with qualifying taking the brunt of this Saturday morning. Time 13:25 CEST. That is when the first race in the Pro Division this weekend takes place. We're unlikely, in fact we will not see a championship fully decided in race 1, but we may well get a big indication of what will come next. The Marshall crew again working hard, making sure everything is straight for the next session out there on the circuit. And of course, for the races in the afternoon for the NASCAR Euro Series. And you see there the cockpit of, I think that's Thomas Chrysonis. Yes, it is, the 13 car. With the steering wheel hung up there. The car at rest now for a couple of hours before we go racing. Catching up with Thomas Toffel as soon as he's available. Of course, he'll have weighbridge commitments and needs to get the car down to the team before he heads over to Andre for the interview. And you see there hear that Andre is already in conversation with Thomas Toffel, so we shouldn't be too far away from seeing him. In fact,
thank you so much, Adam. I'm here with Thomas Toffel. Track record in qualifying, also in Open. This would have also been a good lap time in Pro, we already saw. What an amazing lap. How do you feel?
I feel really good. Yeah, I know that it was more fresh this morning, so more time to warm the tire. So I think we had a good pace for since the beginning of the weekend, and we find a little thing this morning which helped me. And I was not perfect during the pro, and I can put all together to do this good lap during the open quali.
Of course, you're now having the stromwatches.com Pole Award, but there are 2 races coming up in Open. What are your plans there?
No plans. No plans because I am not in the battle for the championship. So, yeah, the plan is clear: is to win the races.
Anything special you have to do to be fast at the track, or you have to be considered during the starts, because turn 1, turn 2 always a little bit tricky.
We will see. We need luck and the pace we have. Now we need a little bit luck, and we will see what happens.
All right, thank you so much. Congratulations. And again, of course, here, the NASCAR Euro Series watch by stromwatches.com.
Go, the much coveted pole award going to Thomas Toffel. Congratulations to him on a very good performance in the qualifying session. We know who our pole sitters will be, but we're a long way away from knowing who our champions will be. But we'll get one step closer in the first races of both the Pro and the Open division. Make sure you join us at 13:25 local time here in Zolder for race 1 of the Pro division. The Open division's first race of the weekend will follow at 4:35 local time here in continental Europe. We are so ready to bring you the season finale of the 2025 NASCAR Euro Series. And all I can tell you, the only thing I know for certain, is that you're not going to want to miss it.